Sistas Bonafide. Sistas Bonafide. Sistas Bonafide. I got my sister and me.
Hey, Sistas Bonafide family. How you guys doing? We know it's been a little while, so thank you guys for joining us back on our channel. Today we're going to kind of delve into Father's Day. And since in light of Father's Day weekend, which is this weekend, we wanted to kind of like talk to you guys about what Father's Day means to us, and then our relationships with our fathers, and just, kind of getting into that a little bit. We know that there may be some, people who can relate to our relationships and dynamics with our fathers. So, kind of want to talk about that. So that's our discussion for today. How you doing, girl?
I'm doing good. I just want to say happy Father's Day to all of the fathers, all of the stepfathers, substitute fathers, moms out there holding it down, for dads that aren't around. I think this is so important because I feel like you and I have both lived experiences with our fathers that are extremely relatable. And it's just like, for me, everything I've gone through with my father as a child kind of just shapes like, everything I want Father's Day to mean, from my own child.
Right.
And just to start and give a little background, it's so crazy because a lot of the reservations and feelings I've had as a child, like I don't harbor those same feelings as an adult. It's just a matter of like, as a child, acting off of, anger, acting off of impulse of like things that are done to us as kids from the people that we should be protected by and who should be responsible for us. And when they're not, that's hard.
Of course.
And when they don't protect us, that's hard. So just for me, so like, it's crazy because my first memory of my dad for me was when I was like, I think I was 4 or 5 years old. And from then, my father was unfortunately incarcerated when I was a baby. Up until then, he did like his first 4 or 5 year bid when I was born. I don't know if that was his first one, but that's the one I remember.
Right.
So I really had only seen my dad in photos, and just like stories and photos. Whereas my brother had like more memory of him because he's older than me.
Right.
So what's crazy is that I obviously didn't understand. Like I knew he was away and I knew he came home from being away, but I really obviously at that age didn't understand the dynamic of why he was there or what prison was. I just knew that when we were home and my grandmother called my mom and said, Elliot is here. I was so excited. We didn't live that far from my grandmother. So I just remember like speed walking in front of my mom and my brother because I was so anxious to just meet him. I had seen so many pictures of him and I was just so fascinated. Like he was just the most handsome thing in the world to me. Like I just couldn't believe he was my dad. Like anything he did at that point really didn't matter to me.
Right.
So like that was my first memory of my dad. So like really meeting him and seeing him in the flesh when I was like 4 or 5. And from there on, my relationship with him was just really rocky. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna get into all the specifics. I feel like that's neither here nor there anymore. But I obviously didn't have the best relationship with him growing up. Unfortunately, he struggled with drug addiction and he was in and out of being incarcerated. So that was kind of my life with my father and my siblings as well. It's crazy because I harbored so much resentment and so much anger with him for the choices he made. And even with feeling all of those emotions, I wanted him so badly. Like, as mad as I was and as resentful as I was towards him, a lot of that anger came from me wanting so much more from him and wanting him to do better for himself.
Right.
Because when he was all right, he was all right.
Right.
And when he was good, I could actually see myself. I loved being around him, and I loved the idea and the thought of being daddy's girl and like being the only girl,
Exactly.
And I feel like I gave him a lot of heat when I was young. I gave him a lot of heat. I still to this day feel I was in the right, rightfully so.
Right.
As I started to grow up, I started to change the dynamic of what I wanted from him. And that helped me cope. I feel like for so long, I was chasing the thoughts of this father-daughter relationship and being his daughter and having my dad and having the idea of all that's supposed to mean for a little girl.
Right.
That only made me more angry. So as I started to grow up, and maybe around the time I turned 17, 18 years old, I started to change the dynamic of what I wanted from him in a relationship. So I didn't feel let down. Like I came to terms with the fact that he wasn't in the best predicament he could be in to be a good father.
Right. Right.
So I need to stop expecting more from him. And if I am going to forgive and move on, then I have to reset my standards, So then I started to come to the conclusion that, you know what? When he's good, I'll take it. When he's not good, I'm going to be okay because I'm not going to expect more, and I'm going to be kind. I started getting to a point where me being angry it was ruining me.
You, exactly.
At the end of the day, and this is just truth, he was going on doing whatever he was doing out there in them streets, and he wasn't in the right state of mind for it to bother him. So we left here on the back burner hurting. And as I started to get older, I was like, oh no, this is just taking away from my energy.
Right.
This is just making me miserable and making me sad and making me hurt because I know that at this time in his life, I shouldn't expect more.
Exactly.
So I came to a point, I think I think this was like consistent from like 18 and on, that I would just be there for him when I could. I no longer expected him to be there for me as a father. I just accepted some kind of friendship from him when it could happen. And that I think allowed us that from there on, even though we fought and we still got into arguments and we still had our back and forths, but it really opened communication between him and I. And it allowed us to get on a page where he was no longer worried if he should speak to me or not. And I invited him in. And obviously that dynamic changed when I had my daughter. Because now I am in a situation where I am feeling like I don't want to deprive her from a grandfather because I have my own anger and reservations towards him. Right. But I also don't want her to be hurt in the way that I was. So I don't want you to say you're going to be there and then you're not going to come, So I feel like I really stepped down a lot from being so hard on him. And I had let him know at a point, I don't want anything from you, but if you can just be a good grandfather to my daughter, nothing else will matter to me. Exactly. Just give her that. My mom passed away when I was 11, so I had a lot of resentment from feeling like he should have been there to carry me through that, which he wasn't. And then with my daughter being born, it's like, I want him to be there because that's her only grandparent. Of course. From my parents.
From you, right.
So it's like, I really did that. So I'll kind of like fast forward on to just a couple years ago, he had felt in a really bad place in his life. And I had decided to put everything aside and to try to help him as best as I could in my power. Not for him, not for me, but for him, and more for him to be there for my younger siblings and to possibly be a better grandfather.
Right.
And so I feel like it wasn't until just a couple years back that me and him got in a good place where he felt like, he could call me and I could call him, and it wasn't looking for anything other than like, are you okay? Like, are you good? What's going on?
Right.
And then, obviously then September of 2020 comes, and, unexpectedly I get the phone call that he passed away. So that really ruined me, because right before my father passed, I had been, even though he still wasn't in the best place in his life, we have been, I think, in the best place we had ever been in our relationship.
Right.
And, that really hurt, because what I will say is that I feel towards, I'll say the end of his life, unfortunately, that he really wanted to make changes, and he really wanted to do better, and he really wanted to step up and be a better grandfather. He was making a really big effort to see Sky. He was making a really good effort to call and do those things, and just keep me in the loop of what's going on with him, whether it was good or bad. And that's where we had come to, so it's really sad, because I felt like, my daughter was robbed, along with, his other relationships with his other kids and grandchildren, but I just can speak on myself and my child.
Of course.
And what I was allowing him to do with my child.
Right.
I felt like it's terrible. It's terrible, and it was so unexpected, and it really killed me, because that was the first time I really felt like I was in a position as an adult to really help him. And that's something that I've never been able to do before. I was just a kid. I was a teenager. Exactly. Life.
Exactly.
And then I also thought that maybe the motivation of him having maybe, a relationship with his grandchild and all these things, I thought would really be the jumpstart he needed to do better. And then, it's just crazy how life works. And then, your life is taken away, and you lose out on the opportunity to live your best life. He lost out on the opportunity to ever make amends with his children or his grandchildren, and to do that. And it really sucks.
Yeah.
So just in light of Father's Day, I was left a lot of Father's Days missing my father, even before he was gone. Missing him, wanting him, wishing that I would be able to spend that day with him. And then, obviously tomorrow comes, and it's bittersweet, because I see my child, who, thank God, has the opportunity to experience that with her father.
Yes.
And it's bitter, because that's sweet. And it's sweet because, we see all the men in our lives, from the younger generations doing right by their children, and having these kids be able to have the experiences that we really didn't have. And then it's bitter because, just on these days, you think about those people that you've lost more, and just the fact that I would never have that.
Right.
I would never have that. So it really just makes me feel like, and just to wrap up everything, I just want to say that, to all these men who have kids, just do the best you can. Do the best you can by your kids. To parents in situations where they are depriving, because not every father who is not in their kids' lives deserves to not have a relationship with their kid, so there to, some parents or mothers, if your child's father wants to do right by their kids, allow them to.
Exactly.
Allow them to. Don't use your anger and your malice to be bitter towards him, and then you're depriving your child of a relationship with their father. And that's the one thing I'll say, and I say this to I'm blue in the face. One thing my mom never did was badmouth my dad. One thing my mother never did was tell that man he couldn't see us. One thing my mom never did was tell us not to see that we shouldn't see him or be respectful to him. Always be respectful because that's your father. And even when my mom passed away, that it was not my grandmother's time to take care of us, she never did that. On the contrary to what many people may think, my grandmother never turned my father away or never not encouraged him to be there or encouraged us to speak to him and have
right.
You know. So I just think that, you know, this is a big reason why we wanted to have this conversation. And then I think about you and I think about, you know, sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're my sister, you know, so, and I think about you and your story, and sometimes having your father there, you know, is not always everything you want neither. So like everybody has their own experiences, and that was mine. And I think that, you know, if you could just tell the Sistas Bonafide family like a little bit about your relationship with your father growing up, and, you know, it differs from my experience, but also, you know, it's similar, you know, in a lot of ways to your feelings as a child, you know, and as an adult now.
Most definitely. First of all, thank you for sharing that story, you know, your experience with your father, because it's never easy, and on any day, it's never easy. And I think that, you know, having that experience, I'm sure it'll touch someone, because that someone out there has gone through something very similar. So I thank you for that. So growing up, my father, you know, one thing I could say about him is that he was always financially there for my mother, and always took care of me financially. I think as a father and as a parent, that was his responsibility. He knew that was what he had to do as a father, to make sure that financially I was fine and my mother didn't have to, you know, want for anything for me. So that's one thing I can't ever take away from him. You know, he took care of me in that regard. But in terms of the dynamic of our relationship, you know, me being, you know, comfortable enough to maybe call him, and, you know, and him calling me, and vice versa, that wasn't necessarily as strong as I would have liked for it to be. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing, because my father is Jamaican. And I remember, just for full disclosure, I remember us having a conversation one time, and he basically said, like, you know, since I'm the parent, I'm the one that needs to to call him. And, you know, and I, as a kid, I didn't understand it. And as an adult, I still don't understand it, because I feel like, you know, growing, you know, as a kid, you want that, you know, that daddy-daughter relationship where your dad called, you know, to make sure that you're okay, or your dad calls you, whatever the case is. But just to kind of round this out a bit, I had to come to the realization that as an adult that, you know, I have to meet my father where he is and with how he is. And that's number one. And number two, I can't continue to compare my relationship with my mother, which is extremely strong. And we have I could not ask for a better mother, woman, friend, like just confidant in my mother than I have right now. I can't continue to compare that relationship with my mother that I have with my father. They're two totally different relationships. And I feel like for so long, I was expecting the same relationship that I had with my mother with my father. And that's not the case. And you know what? That's okay. At this point in my life, I have to respect that. I have to understand that. But by the same token, I also realize that when something is bothering me that maybe, you know, he may have done or something like that, even my mother has told me, you have to speak up. You have to let him know that these things are bothering me. So at least you can try to build on a relationship that is built on honesty and trust. So with that being the case, you know, there was a situation that I had to honestly call him and say, listen, Dad, like, this is something that is bothering me. It's happened in the past and I kind of let it go, but this is something that I have to talk to you about because it's important for me. And I think as a kid, I never really had that dynamic with him. So, you know, as an adult, it's gonna take work. It's not there yet, but I do feel that with me opening up that level of communication, hopefully we can get to a point where even if it's something that I've done to him that he doesn't, particularly care for, that he can call me and we could have that open dialogue and have that open level of communication. I think overall, it's about me trying to figure out the best way to, create a bond with my father at 32 years old. I'm still trying to learn that. And I think maybe the difficulty in that is because I'm the oldest daughter. I'm the girl of the family. Like he has another daughter that's younger than me, but I'm the only girl. I'm the oldest girl, rather, and I was the only girl for a very long time. So I noticed like there was a dynamic that was different between me being the only girl and my brothers who are a little bit closer to him. But one thing I can say that aside from him, taking care of me and being, financially responsible for my upbringing and whatnot, he did definitely make an effort to be there for like graduations and any kind of, like school things that was there to kind of, I guess, celebrate my accomplishments. But, it was like, I would have wanted it to be there along the way, having that relationship along the way. So I could call you up and say, hey, I got this report due, or, this happened in school today, or even as an adult, like, hey, this happened at work. How should I deal with this? How should I deal with this situation? Exactly. So it's not weird. I feel like there's like a gap missing there, but, I trust in God, and I think, and I hope that one day we can reach that level in our relationship. But as I was going to say, one thing that I can say that, I'm very thankful for my father is, the fact that he, although I don't really agree with how it happened, he introduced me to my brother Milton, who has just been the light of my life. Like I really, even though we met as adults, I met him when I was 25 years old. It was something that had to happen. And even though it happened later in life, I don't regret it one bit. I think that's that kind of, me having that relationship with my brother definitely meant a lot to me. And, obviously it wouldn't have happened if my father, didn't somehow bring us together. So I'm very thankful for that. And if I had my way, our dynamic would be different, our relationship would be different. But God is good, and I feel like hopefully it will change over time, and that's all I can really say. And I mean, if there is something that I need to do to help to cultivate that, then I'm gonna try to work on doing it. But by the same token, it takes two, right? And it can't be a lopsided relationship where it's only one person that's making the effort. So, hopefully we can reach to that point. But as of right now, like I said, I have to meet my father where he is. And just for my own sanity and my own peace, I can't continue to delve into the things that may bother me or that may hurt me. I have to speak on it and let him know, but by the same token, I have to just, once I've let him know, I have to let it go, because I can't, it's unfair to me, like you said too, like you can't keep diving into things that will disrupt your peace. It makes no sense. And then the other person is still out here doing whatever, you know what I mean? Exactly. So, it's I think that's pretty much what I'll say about my dad. I still wish him happy birthday. I wish him happy Father's Day and everything like that. But in an ideal situation, I would like a well-rounded relationship with him, the same way that I have with my mother. And as long as we're both on this earth, there's still time to do it. We can't say that, that it can't happen, because it can, as long as we're in our right state of minds and we're physically able to do it. There is a possibility that it can happen. I don't know when or how, but hopefully one day it will. So that's all I'll say about it. But
I love what you said though, because I think like two big points that I gather to that I think are important is the fact that, I feel like sometimes when they think they're doing enough, we want more as kids, and that transcends into adulthood. Like as an adult, you're still longing for that communication. You know, you still want to feel protected. You still want to feel like you could call and say, hey, I have a problem. I need you to come through and be there for me. And just know what's going on with me on a regular basis. And not only sharing my milestones, but be there for the journey. I just want to say and give a shout out to the men in our lives who were not our fathers, but took on that role. Like I was so thankful to God to have, obviously, you know, my brother, and growing up with my cousins who are my brothers, and to have that feeling and protection from brothers growing up. But I want to say especially to my uncle, you know, my Uncle Frankie, who, I mean, I know what a father is because of him. Right. You know, I know what that's like. And if my void was ever filled, or if I ever longed for that type of relationship, I will say that as much as I wanted it from my dad, I was ever so thankful and so grateful to have an uncle who was just really took on that role for my brother and I, you know. So sometimes it's not always your biological parent, and there's other people in your life who influence you in that way and who carry you through in that way. They may not even know they do that for you.
I do want to mention this too, because I see a lot on social media, especially around this time, that, like, you know, I full on respect the mothers who are solely taking care of and taking that role as the fathers in, you know, in an absent relationship with that the child may have with their father. But on social media this year, y'all, let's just pay homage to the fathers that are actually doing what they have to do. Like, let's not take away from the fact that there are fathers out here that are playing the part from beginning to end, not just financially, that are actually taking a stand in their children's lives and you know, doing that, because they do exist and they are out there. So it's, you know, we can't, I know we definitely go hard for Mother's Day, as we should, because mothers are extremely important, but there are fathers out here who are doing the same thing. So I think we just have to really be cognizant of the fact that, like, listen, you know, it could be a little hurtful to fathers who are doing it, who aren't getting the recognition that they deserve, because society just doesn't allow for us to do that.
Because I think there's a misconception that a child's relationship with their mother is more important than a child's relationship with their father. And that's just not true. Sometimes as a child, you may feel that way if your dad wasn't present and your mom was the one taking on everything. But in a perfect world, yes, we can all attest to the fact that a mother's relationship with her child is a lot different, because there's just some type in normalcy in the roles we take on as mothers and the things we do as mothers. But a father's relationship to their child is just as substantial, just as important. And I really, you know, hope that people understand it and say that. And I just want to give a big because I feel like, and tell me if you agree, and we can end it on this note, that I see more and more young fathers stepping up to the plate.
That's true. Yes.
And I mean, I've never in this day seen so many young men just really stepping up and being good fathers. And I love to see it. I love it. So happy birthday.
Yes, no, I think that's a great way to end this conversation off. Yes, happy Father's Day to, you know, all of the fathers out there that are doing it and, you know, doing what they have to do. And, you know, we respect the fathers that are trying. Even if you aren't there yet with your children.
Exactly.
The fact that if you recognize that, listen, I could be doing better by my children, that's a start. And, you know, if as long as you're taking the proper steps to get there, listen, we're all human. No, there's no rule book to parenthood. You know what I'm saying? Like we all have to kind of find our way in this life. And, you know, bringing a child into the world is never easy. And sometimes we take it for granted. But, you know, it's always important to just at least acknowledge when, you know, someone knows that they need to be doing better by their children and they actually are making those steps. So happy Father's Day to everyone out there that have taken on that role as fathers to their children. And we just want y'all to enjoy the day, enjoy the weekend. And yeah, we thank y'all for listening to our stories today. It's never easy talking about such personal aspects of our lives, but it's important in order for you guys to know who we are and our upbringing. So thank you guys so much. So
you have a happy Father's Day, but what you better not do is forget to like, comment, subscribe,
and to hit that notification bell. Ding.
Later, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
It's official. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Ding. Sistas Bonafide.